today's video we are going to make a very simple yet very sweet love or Valentine's Day themed card. So I have some Lawn Fawn lobster ink here, and I have this heart die set. I purchased it at Hobby Lobby. I apologize, I do not know where this came from. I think it's Momenta. I used the smallest heart in there, and I cut out 6 of those. I only use 5 in today's video. This is some Dollar Tree baker's twine. I have some Glossy Accents, and I put that in a fine tip bottle. That just helps me apply it a little more precisely. This is a Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. It is their clearer version. They have ones that are colored and different glitter finishes. This is a Hero Arts. This is the color layering Tulip Bouquet, and I'm just going to use the sentiment from there. This is the Simon Says stamp Friendly Flowers, and I'm using another sentiment from here. So I have 4 panels that I have cut down smaller than, I believe they are 3 3/4 by 4 3/4. And I'm just going to glue all 4 of these together just so that I can give some even dimension to the actual panel that is going to go on the front of the card. So I'm just going to glue all 4 of these together, and then I'm going to glue them to the back of the actual card front panel that is white. I have a card base here that is cream. This is from Paper. All of this cardstock is from Paper Studio. But here I'm going to go ahead and glue that to the back of the card front panel, which measures 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm just going to get this glued all together and set that aside for now. I'm going to cut off a length of this baker's twine. Like I mentioned before, this is from Dollar Tree. And I'm going to just glue this into the corners. I should have been paying a little bit more attention. I ended up gluing them and they were not even across, and it was noticeable and it looked weird. I ended up fixing that later in the video, but in full disclosure, I should have been paying a little bit more attention because they were uneven and it looked terrible. But I do show you how I fixed that later on. So I'm just kind of fiddling, trying to make it sort of loose, but not too loose and swoopy in the middle, so that I do leave a decent amount of room for my sentiment. So I'm just using some reptile glue to just kind of put a dollop on there and let the twine just kind of rest inside of it. Next, I'm going to take some Instant Dimension foam tape from Altenew, and I'm going to adhere just a small square of that to each of these hearts. That's going to give these hearts a little bit more oomph and give them a little bit more dimension and interest when they are on the card. Because this is a very simple card, little details like this matter, and so I chose to do that. I cut off 2 more little links of this baker's twine, and I'm just going to tie them in some little tiny bows. It is true that when you go to record things, you have you're all thumbs, and you can't do things that would normally take you 1.2 seconds to do, end up taking you 1.5 minutes. So I just ended up tying these into 2 little tiny bows, and then we are going to adhere them in the dollops of glue that I placed. I know that these strings are not even. I will trim those off in a minute, but I'm just going to tie these bows and stick them in the glue. Here I'm just going to go through and kind of trim off the excess of that twine, just to make the tails even and to make the banner look like a banner and not like I'm just cutting off some excess, I guess you could say. Now I'm going to go through and kind of place these hearts where I think they would look nice and evenly space them. I started with the one in the middle. There is an even number here, or an uneven number, so I probably should have started a little differently, but I didn't. Decisions were made. So I take the backer off of these, but I'm not pushing down firmly, which is good because I do end up going back and kind of moving these things around. It's at this point that I'm going to realize that this is super uneven and looks kind of dorky. So we need to fix that. So how I'm going to fix that is I'm just going to take this bow off, just kind of peel it off. It does tear the cardstock just a little bit, but when I put the bow back on, you can't really tell. So I'm going to peel that off and look and see if I can get away with the string where it's at. I can't. It's just literally like 1/8 of an inch too short. But it looks dorky and it's driving me nuts, so I do fix that. So I cut that string off, and I just end up kind of rolling it to the kind of top of those hearts. And because they are popped up, they kind of roll and just kind of tuck under there. And I'm just going to take a little piece of string and I'm going to add another dollop of glue and stick that into the dollop of glue, and then tuck that string underneath the heart on that left side, and the right hand side is going to go in that dollop of glue, and then I'm going to stick the bow back on. And that is how we fixed it. An alternative to this, to just gluing it on there, you can't see the glue, it looks absolutely fine. But an alternative would be to actually punch a hole and thread it through. Thread your twine or ribbon or, you know, whatever through. That would be another option. But I just chose to glue mine in place. I have taken that Love You sentiment from the Hero Arts lovely layering tulip bouquet stamp set, and I have placed that into my mini MISTI. And because we have even dimension, because we stacked up that extra cardstock, I don't have to worry about this kind of having gaps or misstamping. But I did choose to use my MISTI, and I'm glad I did, because I ended up having to stamp this. I believe I stamped it 3 times. I've never used the stamp before, so you saw me rubbing my thumb across there. That was just to condition the stamp so it would accept the ink a little better. I'm using that lobster ink from Lawn Fawn to stamp this sentiment. New stamps come with a manufacturing like residue on them, and so that kind of prevents them from accepting ink very well. So just kind of rubbing your finger or wiping them off helps take some of that off so that they accept the ink a little better. So this stamped fine the first time, but I wanted it darker. I wanted it to match that cardstock from Paper Studio a little more closely. I don't know if I mentioned that. So that cardstock is just red cardstock from Paper Studio, so purchased from Hobby Lobby. So I ended up stamping it 3 times, and I felt that that got me a little bit closer to the color of those hearts in that cardstock from Paper Studio. So this is my cream colored heavyweight card base, and I'm going to again put that in my mini MISTI, and it wants to pop up because this is a heavier weight. So I at first tried to use my magnet, and that just wasn't going to work. So I end up taping it closed just so that I don't run the risk of it like popping up and smearing ink and making a mess. So I'm grabbing I'm grabbing the wrong sentiment. This one says something about "you're in my thoughts and prayers." That, I guess that wouldn't be terrible, but that is not the one I wanted for this card. So I end up stamping this and then realizing, you big old dummy, that is the wrong sentiment, my friend. So how I fixed that boo-boo is I took a piece of white cardstock, I trimmed it down to 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm just going to stamp the correct sentiment on that. And I do end up stamping this 3 times too, just so I can get a color more true and keep it consistent throughout the card. Again, I haven't used the stamp before, so I do condition it with my finger just to help it accept the ink a little better. And then we're going to get that adhered into the card. So I just used my liquid glue and applied that onto the card base, and no one will ever know that I stamped the wrong sentiment on there. Next, I applied glue to the front of the, what's going to be our front of our card. Just applied some liquid glue, slid that into place, and I'm going to glue that down. Now we're going to get into some razzle-dazzle, if you will. So I have that Spectrum Noir shimmer pin, and I shook it up, and it has these little, I guess, buttons on the side that say push. That is how you actually get it's not an ink, but the mixture, the glitter, the shimmer, the fun part, to go down into the nib of the brush. So I just pumped that a few times. I haven't used it in a while, so I did need to kind of prime it again, I guess you could say. And then I'm just going to put this all over these hearts. And this is just going to be a clear shimmer. It darkens the cardstock for now because it is wet. But once it dries, it's just a clear sparkle. It doesn't change the pigment of your cardstock. It's just a clear sparkle over the top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that Glossy Accents. This is just like a clear enamel almost. And I'm going to put this over all of these hearts. I have these in a fine tip nozzle bottle. That just helps me apply it a little more precisely. And I'm just going to apply this over all of these hearts. If you get bubbles, which I did have some, but they were tiny and I wasn't worried about them. But if you get bubbles and they're bothering you or they're larger, just take a needle and you can pop those bubbles. This stuff does go on kind of milky, but when it dries, it will be completely clear. So this is the card complete. It is not dry yet, so those hearts are still kind of milky looking, but they will dry perfectly clear, and then there will be some sparkle trapped behind them. So that is it for the day. Thank you so much for watching and for joining me, and I will see you next time.